afternoon, and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. As always, on the fourth Wednesday of the month, I'm joined by Mark LaBarr, conservation biologist for Audubon, Vermont. And today, Mark, will talk about the Winged Warbler Blitz held in May. It's nice to see you again.
Always great to be here.
Before we get going, what's the mustache?
Well, you know, these are my golden wings, as I call it. And since we're talking about golden-winged warblers once again, it's I guess an apropos. I think it's apropos. Some folks actually don't, but those would be family members.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about the project.
So last month we were talking about golden wings and our geolocators.
Right.
We've been doing a lot of work with golden-winged warblers in order to, basically protect their habitat, working with public and private landowners to manage habitat for this bird, which likes young forest habitat, that old field habitat that grows up, and young saplings and things like that. So it's been a great couple of 3, 4, 5 years now we've been working and have had great success. And one of the biggest ones has been working with the Nature Conservancy. Mm-hmm. And that's where this, the Warbler Blitz kind of morphed out of.
So tell us a little bit about that.
So we've been working with the Nature Conservancy down at their Helen W. Buckner Preserve. It's a huge preserve. If you look at Vermont and on the western side, you see that little peninsula that comes off the western side of the state. Mm-hmm. That's pretty much the preserve. And they have a lot of great habitat for winged warblers, for both golden wings and blue wings. And so this area, that is an area that we worked with. It's the preserve, so it's open to the public. They have hiking trails, and they have a lot of good habitat for that. So, you can go online and you can get a whole bunch of information. Great place for a lot of birds. It's got a lot of this shrubby habitat, which is exactly what the golden wings and the blue wings like. Mm-hmm. And so what we decided to do was, after all these years of working there, was to kind of go out and count the birds.
So what kind of work have you been doing?
So a lot of the work has centered around maintaining this young forest habitat. And so what we've done is we've brought in machinery, or TNC, the Nature Conservancy has brought in machinery, and you can see what we call a grinder here. And basically we're removing a lot of invasive species and keeping a lot of native species. So getting rid of the honeysuckle, getting rid of the buckthorn, and creating habitat. We've also been doing the the geolocator project.
You can see a little backpack on
So
them.
there's our geolocator. This is a blue-winged warbler now. You can see it has those white wing bars. And this bird from Buckner went all the way down to Nicaragua and back in the winter of 2017, or I guess 2016-17. So a lot of work there. We've managed a lot of acres, and so we really wanted to get out and see how the birds are responding to this work. Hence the Warbler Blitz.
So what did you do this May?
So we started the day off. Basically, we recruited a number of volunteers. We broke down into teams, but we started the day off doing some bird banding. We wanted to show everybody what they were going to go out. We had staff from the Nature Conservancy, staff from Audubon, Vermont, and a bunch of volunteers. And we, basically did a banding demonstration, showed them some of the birds that we were looking for, and then we, broke down into those teams and sent them out to different parts of the preserve.
Did you catch any winged warblers?
Well, we did. We caught one, which was good enough. It was a nice blue-winged warbler that we caught. And again, you can see a gorgeous bird. It has that black mask, and it has those white wing bars. And if you can see, there's a little bit of black just behind the eye there. So this is probably a blue-winged warbler that probably has a little golden wing with it.
Now, you mentioned in earlier programs they do
hybridize, and they move back and forth. So
now, you talk about catching them.
Yes.
You don't just grab them out of the midair.
No. We set up mist nets. These are large nets that are kind of like volleyball nets. The birds fly into them, and we catch them and put bands on them. That's how we did the geolocator work. We had to catch them first and then let them go on their way and then catch them the following year.
Right, the same birds.
Right. And so down at Buckner, like I said, we had that blue-winged warbler that went to Nicaragua. We also had a golden wing that went to to Colombia, and a golden wing that went to Panama.
Wow.
So we had 3 birds that returned there that gives us a picture of where these birds are wintering.
So tell us about the survey.
So again, we wanted to know what's out there. And when you're walking around and it's, you're trying to cover a real large bit of ground, it's tough to do it with just 2 people. So here's one of our survey teams. The teams went out, and we went out. There's a lot of land to cover down there, and they went to prescribed areas, and they would survey that area for as many birds as they could get. Part of the work that we did.
And that's just putting eyeballs on them.
Putting eyeballs on them, which is really important. And then we also used playback. So sometimes you would hear them, and because both golden wings and blue wings kind of sing the same song sometimes, you really have to see them in order to identify them. So we would use playback in order to call them in and get that identification. So we had, again, sent all the teams out. They surveyed for a couple of hours. They all came back into kind of a central location, and then we went over all the birds that we caught and gave away some syrup and some hats and things like that. So it was a great time.
So how many birds did you find?
We found a total of 24 winged warblers, which is a pretty high number. Buckner has one of the highest concentrations of winged warblers in the state. We had 8 golden wings, 7 blue wings. We had 4 Brewsters, which are one of those hybrids, and then we had 5 that people heard, but we couldn't see. So they kind of fall into the unidentified area because, again, without seeing them, you can hear them, but without seeing them, you can't make a positive identification.
So it sounds like some of the work that you've done at this park as far as to preserve the habitat has been successful.
Yeah, because this habitat is very ephemeral. It's habitat that is changing over the forest, and so as these fields grow back, you lose the habitat. So it has to be maintained by using the machinery or hand cutting, and really by removing those invasives, we've done pretty well. There was a survey that we did, very different kind of survey back in 2014, and we came up with just about the same number of birds. So that's pretty good to have 4 or 5 years to maintain that consistency.
So what about other birds?
So Buckner is great. It's down south, and one of the birds, we had all of our priority species, towhees and field sparrows, but one of the birds that's really fun to see, which you kind of only see down in the southern parts or in the Connecticut River Valley, is a prairie warbler. This is a bird, this is a striking bird, and it's a bird of further south. It creeps into Vermont as far as its breeding range, and these are birds that are found all over Buckner. They enjoy the same habitat that the golden wings and blue wings do, so they benefit from the same management that we have. So I don't know the official count number, but on each one of the surveys they were pulling at least 2 or 3 prairie warblers in with the golden-winged warblers as well.
Now, do you have other events like this?
So we did. We held a banding demonstration event at down at what's called the Collins property, which is down in Middlebury. It was preserved by the Middlebury Area Land Trust, and we did that a couple Saturdays ago. Same kind of thing, went out and caught some birds. We caught a golden-winged and a female blue-winged, and just let folks know what kind of habitat's out there and what we're looking to do to protect these birds. And then we held another demonstration at Chapraig's Park, which is in Heinsberg,
right,
and is a great place to pick up all of the winged warblers.
You've done quite a bit of work there.
We have. We did some management. That was kind of one of our first parks. Areas that we worked on, public areas. We worked at the Charlotte Wildlife Park, then we worked at Chapraig's Park, and we're probably going to be working with the Heinsberg Conservation Commission again to keep those management activities there as well, going over time.
And you have an update on Mr. Orange.
So Mr. Orange is great, Mr. Orange, and we call him Mr. Orange because he has an orange band on his leg. If you look really close to this picture, you can see that orange band on the lower part of his leg. It's kind of tucked in behind that flower. So Mr. Orange was a geolocator bird, and he went down to, when we put the geolocator on in 2016, he went down to Colombia that winter, and came all the way back to Japrags Park, almost to the exact same spot where we had originally put the geo on.
That's unbelievable.
We caught him again, took the geo off, and then this year he was back in that same spot as well. So we're assuming that he went all the way down to Columbia, because we took the geolocator off, so we don't know, but we assume that he's staying pretty tight to his wintering and summering areas. And we also found on that walk that we did with Green Mountain Audubon Society, and did that banding stuff, we also found Mr. White, who was another one of our geolocator birds. He was a bird that went down to the Panama area, and we found him again right in the same area that we had originally put the geo on.
Now I hear there's another special bird at that park.
Right, so this has been, again, Japrags is great for all sorts of species, these shrubland early successional habitat species, towhees and field sparrows. But the big one for the past couple of years, and it's been overshadowing my golden-winged warblers, I'd say that loosely, but has been a hooded warbler. And the hooded warbler has shown up. This is a photo by Enid Elizabeth, who's a local birder. And this is a great warbler. Again, a southern bird that's slowly creeping into Vermont. We don't see it as much as we do the prairie warblers, but it's now shown up at Japrags 2 years in a row. And so
that's got to be pretty exciting for birders.
It is. And Japrags Park earlier this year and continuing on through June, you go there and people, you see people coming and going. Did you see the hooded warbler? Did you see the golden wing? Yeah, the golden wing's up at the second bench. He's singing that weird song. The hooded warbler's just a little bit further on, and it's a great way to see birds and do a little bit of socializing while you're at it as well.
Well, sounds good. Well, we have time for a letter from Peg Haviland from West Newbury, Vermont. I'm not going to read the whole letter, but I'm just going to sort of shorten it up a little bit. She's had a bobolink sitting in a lilac bush at her house, looking in the window, flapping its wings against the window, not getting hurt, but doesn't seem to be taking any interest in other birds. And of course, as we know, bobolinks usually are out in fields.
Right.
So she wants to know what's going on.
Yeah. So.
And what can they do?
Well, it's funny because in a further letter, the bobolink, I think, did go away. So this is the same thing that cardinals do. When they pound into windows. Although we always seem to associate cardinals with kind of shrubbier habitat, your backyard. And again, bobolinks are out in the field. So it's kind of interesting to see a bobolink looking at itself in the reflection, seeing another male there, and being very territorial with that window, and as opposed to doing its R2D2 songs and all that stuff out in the field, which I guess in going back and forth was adjacent to her property.
Well, we had a very attentive Phoebe who was doing the same thing. And it just, all it did was sing and sing and sing and look at the window.
Yeah, and we've talked about it. I think I showed a picture a while back of a cardinal doing it on a car window. So any kind of reflection like that, will sometimes confuse the birds. And
is there anything we can do to help?
I always recommend, if you have an old CD and you put it on a string and it can dangle, any way that you can break up that reflection will, probably push the bird onto somewhere else. Now, sometimes they might see themselves in another window. And we had one time two cardinals, a pair, I guess. The female was hitting my upstairs window and the male the downstairs window. But usually that passes, the sun changes angle, and that reflection goes away, and they get on to doing their normal nesting and.
Now, speaking of nesting, we're in the middle of baby bird season.
We are, and baby birds. Sometimes people find them on the ground, and unless you have 20 cats, it's best to leave them on the ground. If they're mobile and they can move around and they can flap around and move, they're still probably being attended by their parents. And so best to just kind of let them alone and do that. If in the case where you have a baby bird that is not feathered, you can go online to the Vermont Fish and Wildlife Department, and they have a list of rehabilitators that you can potentially call and do something about that. But if they're moving around and they got feathers, just leave them alone.
Leave them be. All right. If you have a bird-related question, you can contact Mark. You can write to him at Audubon, Vermont, 255 Sherman Hollow Road in Huntington. The zip code is 05462. You can also email your questions to Mark. His email address is mlabarr at audubon.org. Send Mark your questions. He'll try to find the answers in an upcoming edition of Bird Notes. Thanks for joining us.
Always great to be here.
That's our program for today. I'm Judy Simpson. We'll see you again next time on Across the Fence.